As they ate, Chloe noticed Elliot acting slightly nervous. She leaned in and whispered, "Relax, babe. I already know what's coming," giving him a playful wink. As their food arrived, the waitress set the plates down carefully. Chloe barely glanced at her, her eyes focused on Elliot. Then, suddenly, Elliot stood up and reached into his pocket. Chloe gasped, immediately grabbing her phone to record the moment. Elliot got down on one knee, holding out the ring. "Will you be my wife, my forever?" he asked, his voice filled with emotion. Chloe stretched out her hand dramatically, showing off her perfectly manicured nails. The people around them clapped and cheered. "Say yes!" someone called out. Chloe smiled, savouring the attention. But then Elliot turned, took the waitress's hand, and slipped the ring onto her finger instead. Chloe froze, her outstretched hand still in midair. "What are you doing?" she stammered, her voice trembling with shock. The restaurant fell silent, and all eyes turned to the scene unfolding. The sun was shining brightly on the school building, and the large staircase leading to the classrooms was crowded with students. Among them was Elliot, a shy boy with thick glasses that kept sliding down his nose. He always buttoned his shirt all the way up to the neck, and his trousers were a little too short, showing off his mismatched socks. Elliot carried a stack of books in his hands, trying his best not to drop them as he walked up the stairs. At the top of the stairs stood Chloe, the most popular girl in school, and her group of giggling friends. Chloe had a twin sister, Clara. Elliot looked nervous but determined. He had been building up the courage to talk to Chloe for weeks. "Hi, Chloe," he said softly, adjusting his glasses. I was wondering if we could talk. Maybe we could..." Before he could finish his sentence, Chloe smirked and rolled her eyes. She leaned over to her friends and whispered something, making them laugh even louder. "Talk to me?" Chloe said mockingly, folding her arms. "Seriously? Look at you, nerd boy. You can't even dress right." Elliot's face turned red, but he didn't give up. "I just thought, maybe we could be friends," he stammered, his voice shaking a little. "Friends?" Chloe said, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "I don't think so. You and me? Not in a million years." As she spoke, Chloe gave Elliot a little push, just enough to make him lose his balance. He stumbled backward, his books flying everywhere, and he tumbled down a few steps. The staircase fell silent for a moment as everyone watched. Then Chloe's friends burst into laughter. "Oops," Chloe said, shrugging her shoulders like it was no big deal. "Maybe next time. Watch where you're going, nerd." Elliot sat on the steps, picking up his books. His hands were shaking, and tears welled up in his eyes, but he didn't say anything. Students whispered and stared, but no one came to help him. Chloe's disdain for her twin sister Clara began early. Clara's face, marred by a congenital condition, made her a subject of ridicule. Chloe, with her radiant looks and confidence, denied Clara's existence in public spaces. She would coldly state, "I don't know her," whenever anyone asked about their resemblance. Yet in private, Chloe's desperation led her to Clara's small hostel room late at night, pleading, "Please, just finish my assignments. You're good at this stuff." Clara would agree, her heart heavy with bitterness and longing for the bond they never had. Their parents made it worse. From the time they were children, Chloe was the favourite. At family gatherings, Clara was either hidden in the background or outright excluded from pictures. It was clear. Her face, her presence, was an embarrassment. She learned early to swallow the lump in her throat as the family photographer declared, "All right, just Chloe this time." Her mother, avoiding Clara's gaze, never corrected this cruelty. The exclusion cut deep. Night after night, Clara lay awake, tears soaking her pillow, wondering why she was born at all. Thoughts of ending her pain crossed her mind often, but her grandmother, her only source of solace, was her grandmother. "Don't listen to them," the elderly woman would whisper, stroking Clara's hair. "You have more to offer this world than they can see." Elliot had been searching for a new apartment when he crossed paths with Clara outside her hostel. She had noticed him wandering around and hesitantly approached, pointing to a notice on the hostel bulletin board. "There's a room available here," she said softly, barely meeting his gaze. Grateful, Elliot checked out the room, liked it, and moved in shortly after. At first, their interactions were casual. Elliot was polite, often greeting Clara as they passed in the hallways. But over time, he began to notice how kind and thoughtful she was. She would lend him her notes when he struggled with assignments and even share her meals when he forgot to cook. Clara, who was used to being invisible to most people, found his attentions surprising and, for the first time in her life, comforting. One day, while they were chatting, Elliot mentioned his crush. "You won't believe this," he said with excitement. "There's this girl I've liked for a while now. Her name's Chloe." Clara froze for a moment. "Chloe," she repeated, her voice faltering. "That's my sister." Elliot's jaw dropped. "You're kidding. Chloe is your sister? But you're so different," he said, regretting the words as soon as they left his mouth. Clara forced a smile, trying not to show how much it hurt. She already knew her sister was the family's star, the one everyone admired, but hearing Elliot gush about her made the sting sharper. Despite knowing the truth, Elliot didn't stop chasing Chloe. He started asking Clara for advice, desperate to win her sister's heart. "What does Chloe like? How can I get her to notice me?" he asked one evening. Clara laughed bitterly, though she hid it well. "You can't make someone like you," she said. "But maybe start with your fashion. It's awful." She smirked, and Elliot chuckled along, though he still seemed distracted by thoughts of Chloe. No matter how hard Elliot tried, Chloe didn't care. She insulted him, laughed at his efforts, and ignored him at every turn. Clara watched it all, feeling torn between pity and resentment. One evening, while they were chatting in Elliot's room, she joked, "What if we dated instead?" She tried to laugh it off, but her heart was pounding. Elliot didn't notice. He just smiled awkwardly and said, "God forbid, you're not my type. I only want your sister." Clara's smile faded, though she quickly turned her face away so he wouldn't see the tears welling up in her eyes. Clara tried to move on, but she couldn't. She started dressing more like Chloe, wearing brighter clothes and doing her hair differently, hoping Elliot would see her in a new light. But no matter what she did, Elliot's mind was fixed on Chloe. It wasn't until Elliot convinced her to attend a party with him and his friends that things began to change. "You can't keep hiding," Elliot said as he dragged her out of her room. "Come to the party. Be yourself. I like you just the way you are." Clara reluctantly agreed. At the party, Elliot handed her a drink and stayed by her side most of the night, encouraging her to loosen up. They both had too much to drink, and before either of them realized what was happening, they ended up back in Elliot's room. What happened that night shocked Clara but also awakened something in her. For the first time, someone had made her feel wanted. The next morning, Elliot was full of regret. "Clara, I'm so sorry," he said, pacing back and forth. "I didn't mean for that to happen. I didn't even ask if it was okay." Clara, still processing her emotions, interrupted him. "It's fine, Elliot. We're adults." She tried to sound casual, but deep down she wanted to hold on to the feeling he had given her, even if it was fleeting. Over the next few days, Elliot knocked on her door with exciting news. "Guess what?" he said, grinning from ear to ear. "I got the contract. A big one. My life is going to change." Clara was genuinely happy for him. She had seen how hard he worked and how much he struggled to improve himself. But when she told Chloe the news, her sister sneered. "Why are you following that broke boy? He's not worth it," Chloe said, rolling her eyes. Elliot's success began to show. He started spoiling Clara with gifts, things she had never experienced before. He posted pictures of them together on Instagram, even wearing matching outfits. For the first time, Clara felt like she was part of something special. But Chloe noticed too. Jealousy began to boil inside her. "I can't let her take what's mine," Chloe thought angrily, scrolling through pictures of Clara and Elliot. "She's ugly. She doesn't deserve him." One night, while Clara was asleep, Chloe sneaked into her room and took Elliot's number from her phone. She began texting him, pretending to be interested. "I love you," one message read. "We'd be perfect together." Elliot was caught off guard. Chloe had always been his dream girl, and now she was suddenly showing interest. He started texting her back, confused but intrigued. Yet every time he saw Clara, he felt a pang of guilt. She had been there for him through everything. But the allure of Chloe was strong, and eventually he gave in. After Elliot started secretly dating Chloe, he became distant from Clara. He no longer sent her sweet texts or surprised her with gifts. Instead, all his attention shifted to Chloe. Late at night, Clara would ask him on the phone, "Why don't you talk to me like before? Is something wrong?" Elliot would sigh and reply, "It's just work, Clara. I'm really busy these days." Graduation came and life took a new turn. Elliot moved to Lagos for a better job, while Clara and Chloe stayed in Asaba. Clara still tried to keep their relationship alive, calling him often. "I'm coming to Lagos soon to spend time with you, babe," she told him during one of their evening calls. But Elliot always had an excuse. "I'll be travelling for work that weekend," he said quickly before ending the call. As he hung up, he turned back to Chloe, who was lounging on his couch laughing at something on her phone. Elliot's friends weren't blind to Chloe's behaviour. They could see how rude and dismissive she was, even to him. "Guy, this babe doesn't love you. She's just here for your money. Be wise," one of his close friends warned. But Elliot brushed it off, convinced Chloe was perfect for him. "I can't be with someone I can't show off," he'd say, more to convince himself than anyone else. Chloe, however, didn't care about Elliot's friends. In fact, she treated them terribly. Whenever another woman called Elliot, Chloe would grab his phone and answer with a sharp tone. "Why are you calling him? He doesn't have time for you," she'd snap before ending the call. She didn't care if they were colleagues, old friends, or just acquaintances. One day, Chloe took her rude behaviour too far. A woman came to visit Elliot at his apartment. A stylish, youthful woman in her 40s who dressed like she belonged on a Gen Z fashion blog. Assuming it was one of Elliot's side chicks, Chloe stormed to the door. "What are you doing here? Can't you see he's taken?" she shouted, nearly slapping the woman. But before her hand connected, Elliot appeared and grabbed her wrist. "Chloe, stop it," he said, horrified. The woman stood there, shocked, before shaking her head in disbelief. "I hope this isn't the woman you plan to marry, Elliot, because if it is, my answer is no," the woman said firmly. Chloe's face turned pale as she realised the truth. The woman was Elliot's mother. "Oh my God, I'm so sorry," Chloe stammered, suddenly trying to act sweet and apologetic. But Elliot's mother wasn't buying it. "Mummy, she's nice. You'll like her once you get to know her," Elliot tried to plead, but his mother shook her head. "A woman who disrespects others won't respect you or your family." Meanwhile, Clara was still in Asaba. She knew her sister was dating Elliot. She had seen the clues: Elliot's lack of attention, Chloe's sudden trips to Lagos, and the way her sister gloated about dating a man with money. But Clara said nothing. She believed Elliot was a grown man who knew what he wanted, even if it broke her heart to see him with someone like Chloe. Clara kept her feelings bottled up, convincing herself it wasn't her place to intervene. "If he's happy, that's what matters," she told herself, even though she knew deep down that Elliot was heading toward heartbreak. Chloe couldn't contain her excitement when she called Clara one evening. Her voice was high-pitched with joy. "Clara, he's going to propose to me. I found the ring in his wardrobe. Oh my God, it's beautiful. I'm going to be a bride," Chloe gushed, not even bothering to mention who the mystery man was. Clara forced a smile even though her heart sank. "Wow, that's amazing, Chloe. Congratulations. You deserve to be happy," she said, her voice steady despite the lump forming in her throat. When the call ended, Clara dropped her phone and buried her face in her hands. Tears streamed down her cheeks. She had suspected it, but hearing it confirmed hurt more than she imagined. Elliot had finally chosen Chloe. He had dumped her without even saying the words. Meanwhile, Elliot had been planning something entirely different. A few days later, he told Chloe, "Let's go shopping. You need a new dress for a special dinner." Chloe didn't think much of it. She assumed he was planning to pop the question that night. She picked out a stunning outfit, a figure-hugging red dress that made her feel like a queen. Elliot complimented her, fueling her confidence even more. They arrived at a fancy restaurant, the kind with chandeliers and soft music playing in the background. Chloe couldn't stop smiling, certain that tonight would be the night. They ordered their meals, and as they ate, Chloe noticed Elliot acting slightly nervous. She leaned in and whispered, "Relax, babe. I already know what's coming," giving him a playful wink. As their food arrived, the waitress set the plates down carefully. Chloe barely glanced at her, her eyes focused on Elliot. Then, suddenly, Elliot stood up and reached into his pocket. Chloe gasped, immediately grabbing her phone to record the moment. Elliot got down on one knee holding out the ring. "Will you be my wife, my forever?" he asked, his voice filled with emotion. Chloe stretched out her hand dramatically, showing off her perfectly manicured nails. The people around them clapped and cheered. "Say yes," someone called out. Chloe smiled, savouring the attention. But then Elliot turned, took the waitress's hand, and slipped the ring onto her finger instead. Chloe froze, her outstretched hand still in midair. "What are you doing?" she stammered, her voice trembling with shock. The restaurant fell silent, and all eyes turned to the scene unfolding. The waitress, who had been wearing a mask, slowly pulled it down, revealing her face. It was Clara. The crowd gasped. Chloe's jaw dropped as Clara stood there, tears in her eyes but a triumphant smile on her lips. "We planned this," Clara said, her voice steady as she looked directly at her sister. "You wanted to take what wasn't yours. You never cared about Elliot. You only cared about what he could give you." Chloe's face turned red as murmurs rippled through the restaurant. Phones were still recording as people whispered to each other. "She thought she could reap where she didn't sow," one person said, shaking their head. Elliot stood up and wrapped his arm around Clara. "I chose the woman who was there for me when no one else was," he said firmly. "Clara has always been the one." Chloe couldn't believe what had just happened. Her knees felt weak as she tried to process the humiliation. She had been so sure she was about to become Elliot's fiancée, only to have the rug pulled out from under her. Tears stung her eyes as she stormed out of the restaurant, her phone still clutched in her hand, recording her downfall for the world to see.